Welcome back to the Excellent Interview, a podcast for Black educators with me, your host, Dr. Asia. Um, it's another beautiful day out here in Denver, even though I'm wearing a sweatshirt and it's supposed to be warm and it's in the middle of May. And I hope that you all have been enjoying the podcast. We're in our episode 80 something, and I cannot believe we're already in our 80s. And I feel like by the end of the year, we'll have our 100th episode. So, super excited about that. But we're not here to talk about me. And I always say we're not here to talk about the weather. We're here to talk to Dr. Danica Moore, who's here to share her story. Welcome to the podcast. How are you today?
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Thanks for having me. I am grand.
Awesome. I'm glad you're grand. We just had a whole conversation before we got started about school lunch and milk on field trips. Because we were talking about how schools will pack lunches for kids, and like, do your schools out there, folks? I'm talking to the audience. Do y'all schools have the milk go with you on the bus, or do kids just bring a water bottle? Because we were trying to decide if that's even sanitary as far as like milk spoiling. That was a whole conversation we had before we got started. So if you're listening to this or you're watching this on YouTube, let us know in the comments if you all transport milk or y'all just bring water bottles. That's a random thing, Dr. Danica, that I just wanted to put out there. But so tell us a little bit about yourself. We'd love to hear more about you.
Yes, yes. So, hi, I'm Dr. Danica Moore. I think I would pride myself most on being a daughter, a godmother, a auntie, and just a lover of children in general. The only three things that top my love of children, or even parallel with it, I would say consider myself a shoe and vocabulary enthusiast. I love words, learning languages, um, and then yeah, just shoes. I'm a big shoe person, but not like the typical, most people expect a shoe person to be like big into Jordans or some specific thing. I'm
Uh-huh.
more of an Air Max. I like heels, like all kinds of heels, even though I'm almost 6 foot tall. It probably drives my big sister crazy. Yeah, because I'm the taller baby sister. But I like to add even more inches. So I love heels, wedges. So yeah, I'm a shoe fanatic, like love every shoe. And I love to travel. My love of travel is probably the most honorary thing I think I've been able to do for myself in this lifetime is exploring, and my passion is exploring off North American soil, specifically the motherland, getting to Africa as much as I can, exploring countries there. But yeah, so those are like the big pieces of me. Before there was a Dr. Janika, before there was an educator Janika, I think that's who I've been. That helps me just navigate the world and remind myself of who I am. Um, in the professional realm, I am an educator. I have been in the education world for this is my ending my 19th year now, so I'm about to hit 20 years. Unbelievable, because I still in my head think I'm just like 28. But
Yes.
hitting your 20 in education, I started off as a special education teacher. And then when I felt like that just was not the gift that I was given, even though I really was passionate about children, children with different the neurodiversities and different behavioral needs. So I ended up becoming a title reading and math specialist, and I stayed in that realm and then just added things on in the same title. So I was a title reading math specialist, an English language learning instructor, a multilingual learning instructor, which I absolutely love that piece as well. And then I ended up going into the district office world where I was an equity facilitator and a pilot equity facilitator for the district that I was in the Midwest in Kansas. And from there, went into the consulting realm and got really set on just being able to support and guide people in racial equity development at the school level, teachers, administrators, and then went into the college realm. Thought I could, help people coming into the education field develop that lens early at the age of 19. And then, yeah, I became a consultant and built out a company called Fortified Educational Practices, where I'm now able to use educational methods to support racial equity leaders in all realms, not just education, city government, hospitals, mental health hospitals and clinics, corporate world. And then while also doing that, I serve as a product director for the Nashville Freedom Schools Partnership, which is a nonprofit that helps launch freedom schools that are tied to the Mississippi Freedom Summer, the Freedom School movement of 1964, all over the Davidson County, Tennessee area. So I do that at the same time as consulting and supporting across different social justice, racial equity aligned organizations.
Now, folks, Dr. Danica just gave the whole exit interview in the last 2 minutes. Now we got to back up and start with our first question. She said, "I'm gonna just go ahead and give y'all a preview of what I'm doing." So now let's go ahead and dive into that because there's a lot to discuss here. And I remember you talking about freedom schools and what you're working in supporting those. And I know that the audience is gonna want to learn more about that. The last time we had someone in our space that talked about freedom schools, it was Branta Lockett, who was trying to open one here in the Denver area, and it
Wow.
wasn't yeah, and it wasn't successful because she couldn't get a charter. And
Mm,
so I think we should revisit that and have a conversation about what that work looks like in
yeah.
2026. But we'll start off with our first question or our second question, which is, what was your journey into education? How did you know that education was for you?
So I was one of those kids that in second grade, I remember if anyone asked me what I wanted to be, I think it's about like the first, second grade realm when you ask a kid what they want to be, you typically get, I remember in my era, which is late 80s, early 90s, that it was kids wanted to be nurses or doctors, teachers or astronauts. And somehow
Yeah.
I wanted to be all three of those. But the one I said first and second grade, the first time I remember being asked ever what I wanted to be when I got older, I said a teacher because I knew I loved babies. I wasn't even thinking about children that can walk and talk. I was thinking like infants. And so
Yeah.
when I would say a teacher, I was really thinking like a daycare, nursery, like, and then later on was really adamant that I would teach nothing above kindergarten. But then somewhere in the second, third grade transition, I would tell people I wanted to be a teacher and a nurse. And before fourth grade, I was saying an astronaut. And so then when it was time to like figure out these things are not connected, I remember thinking in my head, but never saying it out loud to my reading teacher, Miss Cooper, I think I'm going to be a teacher in space, but I'm going to be educating nurses because they're going to need nurses in space. I remember like having this whole theory of how this is going to
Uh-huh.
work because I was going to combine astronaut, teacher, nurse, but it wasn't even that I was going to be doing the nurse and astronaut. Astronaut was just about getting to space. Nurse was about helping people, and then teacher was like, I'm going to teach people who help people. That was what I came up with,
Yeah.
and I lounged there until literally my senior year of high school. And then senior year of high school was like, but I kind of like pediatrics. I kind of like anything with babies. I was just rattling my. I wanted to do law school and be like a child welfare lawyer. And then all those things weeded out quickly simply because I despise science. Like it was
Mm.
not the strong suit for me in high school. Other than biology, once I cleared biology, physics, chemistry, all that other stuff that came, had zero desire. Astronomy, so space was definitely out. So I just wasn't a science person. So I held true to the teaching career. But what was amazing for me was early on, I got a lot of experience in the teaching realm as a 10-year-old and an 11-year-old that most kids don't get afforded. Um, I went to a school in Western Kansas at that time in elementary, and they had a program, the summer school program, where like the certified summer teachers,
Mm-hmm.
where if you had a certain score in math as a fourth grader or fifth grader, you could help teach the summer school. And so I got placed
Mm.
as a fourth grader going into fifth grade as a summer school assistant. I assisted a teacher who was over math summer school for like first and second graders. And my entire task was it is your job to teach the children how to be able to count up with money. So being able to count by pennies until they got to the next five or 10, and then dimes, nickels, quarters, and dollars, and basically essentially building them for the skill of being able to count back change by the time they're in fifth grade.
Oh
Because in my
wow.
elementary school, if you could count back change in fifth grade, you could work at the middle school sports concession stand for pay.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay,
So
hold on. That's
yeah,
what you just said is a lot because we talk about grow your own programs,
yeah.
right? And I don't know if that was necessarily what their focus was, but that is really interesting, especially because you said a fourth grader going to fifth grade. So you are 9, 10 years old,
Hmm.
so doing this work of supporting second grades, which I think is brilliant, right? Because it teaches patience, it teaches all types of skills to both the second grader and to the fifth grader. but then also the counting change and the concession stand. Like, that's a lot of skills in such a short
That are
amount of
dead
time.
today.
Yeah. Yeah, they are dead today. And it's interesting because I went to, I don't remember, Burger King, who knows, just recently, and the change, I gave the guy cash, and he gave me back 2 dimes, and I said, "No, you. I need 7 more cents back." And he's like, "Oh, oh, oh," and I told
Mhm,
my daughter who was sitting in the seat next to me, I said, "You have to pay attention because even though the money was right there on the screen, and he could have just picked up the pennies,
mhm.
he's still not using those skills. So you have to pay attention. So to know that what you're describing, I can imagine child labor. That's not all the ways that people could say that was the incorrect thing to do or not right. That it was a skill and still a skill that people need today. That, like you just said, they're not using.
Yeah. And like when I think back to it, I remember the teacher in the room. I still remember her name. I believe her name was Miss Heskett. But I don't. I mean, there was never a lesson plan. They would just tell me this is the task you need to work on for the entire summer school program. I was designing my own activities for how to do it. They might print a worksheet that I asked them to print for me, but I was literally my own independent teacher with these going into first, second graders and
Wow.
trying to figure out like what are we going to do today for our little, it was a rotation. So she was in the room. I do remember that. She had a kidney shaped table over here. I don't even remember if she was doing reading or math or what exactly she was teaching, but they rotated in groups of like 3 or 4. And
Yeah.
sometimes I would get one kid that came to me. And so it's just independent one on one. I'm going to teach you what I know about counting change. That's all I remember. But I do believe that that experience is where my love of numbers came from, even
Sure.
though middle school math about took me out. I don't know what happened, but middle school math got really complex.
Hmm.
But my teacher talked really, really fast in it was either 6th or 7th grade. And I was just like, no, I can take that back. He was the math teacher for all grade levels. There wasn't even different math teachers by grade level.
Hmm.
So for all levels, I remember thinking like, oh gosh, he talks so fast. I'm not gonna catch on to numbers. But I do have a very numeric mind. But I didn't know that until high school. So numbers
Hmm.
are just like a thing. So yeah, that was actually the start. And I loved it. Like I just remember like at the end of the summer getting this mug with little chocolate bars in it that was like a thank you from the teaching staff and the kids. And I'll never forget it because she said, now, when you eat all these chocolates, be careful who you share them with. And I was like, yeah, yeah, I got it. And then throughout the summer, I remember the first one. So they actually weren't chocolates. Some of them were, some of them weren't. They were money wrapped in chocolate bars. So like the little
Oh.
mini Hershey's things. So like there might be like a $5 bill, a $10 bill. And so it took a couple of weeks where I was like, wait a minute, this candy must have melted. And I'd open it like, oh gosh, because I remember sharing with my siblings and my mom, like, mom, there's money. Like, give me my candy back. Like, let me so we like open them all. But I'll never forget that thank you gift because I thought that was so cool. And in my mind, I learned the perks of Teacher Appreciation Week
Mm.
early. Like, ooh,
Mm.
teachers get gifts and sometimes there's money and candy. But like, 9, 10-year-old me, and I'm young for my grade level. So I just remember thinking, like, this is really quick. Like, this is awesome. Like, I can be a teacher.
Yeah.
I can do this, right? And so that was take one. And then fast forward another year later, I entered the spiritual world realm of teaching because I had a Sunday school teacher at church that the kids were kind of cutting up. And I remember he said, if you think you can teach this better than me, please do. And I remember taking my little Sunday school book and being like, actually, I can. Okay, everybody, sit down. We're going to read. And so I taught the Sunday school lesson at church, and we would exit Sunday school and go in with the adults, and each Sunday school class share what they learned, and everybody
Yeah.
recites the scripture. And I thought, he'll still do that. He said in front of the congregation, like, actually, I didn't teach today, so she's going to share what the class learned today. And so I did that. I remember being super nervous, like thinking, oh gosh, is my mom gonna think I was in there cutting up? Like, he just put me
Sure.
on the spot. I thought that was between us. And
Right.
didn't. My mom, we got in the car, we're leaving church, and she was like, so you taught the class? Like, what? I was like, yeah, well, mom, he offered, he literally said, if I thought I could teach it better, teach it. And so yeah, so 5th grade that summer, the like somewhere between summer and fall. So simultaneously, so 4th grade, ending 4th grade, I teach summer school. The next year, I just because of this, they passed off the Sunday school class to me at church.
Oh,
So
wow.
I'm teaching like my younger brother was in the class. We're only 3 years apart. Like and the church is like all family. So I'm teaching my little cousins, like everybody in that was related to me. So now I'm the teacher. So now I'm prepping lessons at home, reading over my
Yeah.
little Bible story. So yeah, so I got like curriculum, planning lessons, planning my own activities, like what craft. I got that at 10 and 11 years old. And so I tell people all the time, my retirement benefits should have really started when I was 10. They really should have. And so I'm about to be 42 and I just feel like I should be able to retire by now. And I have not stopped. Like I did summer school every year from that year on. Found ways to volunteer in one, be in one. It didn't matter. So yeah,
Yeah.
10 years old was my actual career start. So if I'm really being honest, I'm hitting 32 years in the field. Like we haven't looked back. So
I love that. This is a first for us. I mean, and I'm sure that some folks have had Sunday school experience, but not told this in the way you've told it. And that's important to share because a lot of folks come on and say they've known since they were really young that they want to be educators. They taught their siblings, and in the basement they play school or in the
mhm.
neighborhood kids and things like that. But I love to hear all the ways that folks come into like a traditional education space from other places. So you go to college, you go right into education major, I'm assuming.
Yeah, knew from jump, applied to one college, like
Yeah.
put all my eggs in that one basket, which
Yeah.
made my parents a little nervous, but got into the school I wanted to. Now the quest of getting into education, yes, I knew I wanted to be a teacher. Now I knew I was going to the freshman summer orientation
Mhm.
when they call for the education folks. I'm going to go here and enroll my classes. What I didn't know is my high school counselor. There was a program on my campus called Prime. Could not tell you what Prime stood for, but
Mhm.
the person leading Prime, Dr. Susan King, talk to her to this day still. I remember we're at the hotel night one of orientation. Me and my mom have driven 4 hours, 4.5 hours to get to my college, doing all my summer orientation. And we're at our hotel, and the someone comes pounding on the door. And my mom is a very social person, makes a lot of friends. I remember watching TV, and I was kind of looking at her like, "Who's at the door?" We didn't order any food, and I said, "Oh Lord, who'd you befriend now with this orientation?" And so we opened the door, and this lady standing there, tall, slender, black lady, and she's out of breath. And mind you, and I think this is just like telling of just how far we've come in terms of like security and things, right?
Yes.
Because she comes in the room and she was like, I know you don't know me. My name is Dr. Susan King. I'm the director of the Prime program. We recruit multi-ethnic, multiracial, multicultural. They were using the term multicultural at the time.
Mhm.
Multicultural educator. We have this program. There's money available. My mom was like, money? Well, come on in.
Yeah.
I'm sitting on the bed, sitting up like some ladies in our hotel room. Like, this is really weird, right? I think we were in pajamas too. We're just chilling
Probably.
watching TV. And so she was like, I'm trying to figure out why she's out of breath, right? And so she tells my mom, like, I don't know, like, what kind of golden child you birthed, but like, you know that we have been calling your daughter's high school for months on end, trying to get in touch with her, and the school blocked us from having contact with her. We've been trying to
Mm.
all the money. We got this program, and my mom's like, "Wait, what?" And so I'm like, "Wait a minute! Like, I know who the counselor is. Like, he blocked my money." And so she's like, "I have
Mm.
these forms for you. This is what the program does." So she gave us brochures, went through a whole run through of it, and by the time she left my hotel room, now mind you, I was already on like a pretty big academic ride already. And so she just added to the pot. So I ended up in this program called Prime that then got renamed and kind of reconfigured about a year later to the MSP program, which was Multicultural Scholars Program. And they were putting them all over the campus. And so then I was okay, now I'm definitely going to education because this woman like apparently ran all over this orientation of thousands of students. My undergrad school was it's Division 1, so it's a pretty big college, about I would say 30 plus thousand undergrads alone. There's a
Sure.
med school plus all the grad schools on campus.
Sure. Yeah.
So she was running all over this campus trying to find me that first day, like asked me, "Well, do you know the student? Like, how do you say your name?" And so that's why she was out of breath. So I don't even know how she tracked to the hotel, but somehow asking around, she found out what hotel we're in. She went to the desk, said our name, and they're like, "Oh yeah, she's in." Like that's how that like today you can't do that in a hotel, right?
No,
Like
yes.
he was able to do this and get to our door and knock. And so my mom and I have been forever grateful to her. She is my first, and then like my first contact of a professor of color on campus, right? I
Sure.
also,
Yeah.
her name was Dr. King. So, yeah, so then she made sure like, I'm going to take care of you. And from that day on, the next day at orientation, looked for her in the crowd. My mom signed off on the paperwork. And so now it's like, okay, now I'm for sure an education student. There's no
Yeah.
changing my mind now because it was kind of like, well, I might want to be pre-law. I might want to be this. She was like, listen, sweetie, when we lock in this money, like you're with us now. So that
Yeah.
was like the done deal. So I left orientation June, July of 20 or 2002, like locked in at like you're going to be an educator. Like that was it. So
Yeah.
yeah, so shout out Dr. King. I think that's the definition of what like to even think about what it looks like in a predominantly white high school. My high school was all white, and there was me. My sister was already gone. My brother was still in middle school. There, I had maybe one or two Mexican peers across the school,
Mhm.
one peer from India. That was it. And so what it
Mhm.
looked like for a black woman track down a black star to put on a white school to make sure that we had access and opportunity, she sealed the deal for me. Like that's the kind of teacher I wanted to be. Like I'm gonna make sure I go to bat for my students to make sure they get what they want. So then I got
Yeah.
that addition going into college. Like that was my intro to college with Dr. King.
Shout out to her. I love that story. Yeah, and like the dedication. You're right. Security wouldn't
Like,
go with that now, but I'm glad that they they gave that information up. So you finished school. Tell
mhm.
us about those first years of teaching. Where did you teach? What grades? What was the experience like? Did you have to move? Tell us all those details.
So my first year of teaching, I was commuting. So I stayed in my college city and I was commuting about 35 minutes over. Um, and then the drive just got to be too much. I was in a fourth grade classroom, and I knew from my student teaching and my internship when it was time to switch, you have to do a half a year in, an older grade level, then the other half in a lower grade level. My second half of student teaching put me in second grade. And again, in my mind, I was going to be a kindergarten, like, and those were the
Mm-hmm.
cutest kids. I got to second grade and was like, we can't go lower than this. Like this, we need to go back up. And I
Interesting.
missed fourth graders. I missed them so much. And so I told myself, like, this is the prime grade for me is fourth grade. So I taught in it's called Shawnee, uh, in a really awesome school there when ESL was just forming, like the US was just getting a handle on to have ESL programs in schools and ESL teachers. So I was like, "Ooh, I got to get my certification in this." So I actually stopped teaching in the middle of the school year at winter break.
Mm-hmm.
And one, the commute was, even though it's 35 minutes, I was coming home so exhausted. Like I was like, "This, ooh, these children wear me out." And
Yeah.
so I decided to go back to school to get my master's right away because my undergrad, we were one of the first groups to graduate when they moved education to a 5-year program. So that fifth year, you're basically getting everything for your teaching certification to get the actual license and half a master's. So I decided to go back and get that other half of the master's and add the specialty of ESL on
Mm-hmm.
because the entire time I came into teaching, even in second grade, I knew from second to fifth I had never had a brown teacher even working in my school, like
Mm-hmm.
not at all. Middle school, no brown teacher working in my school. So I came
Mm-hmm.
into education thinking I need to be visible to more black and brown students
Sure.
because I knew racially what black and brown meant because both my parents' sides are from a the only all remaining black settlement west of the Mississippi. So I'm raised in this community. Summer times there. By third grade, we inherited my great grandfather's house. So I knew what it meant to be in black community. I felt the difference at school. So
Sure.
it's never a safe place for me. Home, church, everywhere outside of school was nothing but family. I was raised with my grandma, both grandparents, both pairs. My grandma, on my mom's side has 12 siblings, so all
Yeah.
those great aunts and uncles. So I knew what it meant to be in a space where like it felt like normal to say certain things I didn't have to explain. So when I
Yeah.
kept teaching in the background of my mind, it was always I gotta be in my mind, I was gonna be the first ever black or brown teacher because I'd never seen one until college and Dr. King.
Mm.
It didn't exist for me K-12.
Mm-hmm.
So
Wow.
I held on to that. But then trying to figure out how that fit in, it was like there was still this thing in the back of my head, like there's got to be more to than just teaching in the classroom. So when I discovered this thing of ESL, I love language, already had two languages. And so I thought, okay, ESL will do that for me. Like, oh, that thing that's still like burning inside me is going to come out with language. So I got my ESL certification. Then I went local. So this whole thing was to go back to school, not teach. Again, it tells how far we've come with security.
Mm-hmm.
I'm living maybe 5 blocks from the campus. walking to and from my school, going to class, the School of Education building. And one day, this call came in from the local school district in the city where my college is at, and I believe I was going to put my name in to be a sub. I was trying to figure out how you even do that because I was like, the goal is to just focus on school. I couldn't imagine working and going to school at the same time. And it's crazy that that's like a normal thing today.
Yeah,
But
it
for me, it
is.
wasn't. I was like, I'm going to be tired. I'm sleepy. I want to do all this. And so I don't even remember her name. She called and she was like, hey, we got your information from so and so. Like the fact you gave my cell phone number, like what? And so she says, we would love to talk to you at this school. The school was literally a block from my apartment. And so
Oh
she said,
wow.
"Will you walk to the school tomorrow and meet with the principal?" And then she said it was like at 8 o'clock in the morning, right? I'm 21, 22. My goal was, okay, I'm gonna get up and go meet with this lady real quick. I'm going back to bed. I'll never forget this, and most people don't forget this and we're there. I got up and put on a hoodie and some baggy basketball sweats. I'm talking like oversized. I looked like I was going to the gym. Walked into this school. It was a full out interview. And I'm looking around. I said, "Oh, I thought we were just talking." She was like, "Oh, did they not tell you? I didn't apply for anything."
Oh yeah.
So I'm thinking I'm going home to sleep. So I sit down, do this entire interview. I still have the hoodie and the sweatpants I interviewed in, if that tells you an idea how oversized they were. This was my true loungewear. I'm getting back on the couch in about 35 minutes.
Yeah.
I interview and I have no clue what we were talking about. And so by the time we're done, she's like, well, it's a specialized position. It's not filled. School started about a month ago, yada, yada, yada. I said, okay, I'll help y'all out till, but I need to go to school. Like, I need to be out of this building at this time. I need to leave early. I got to go do my classes. Um, she says, great. I'm ready to go home and go back to bed. She said, we're going to show you your classroom. The classroom, because it was vacant, was basically like a storage for all extra furniture. She was
Sure.
like, if you can just get the room set up, we'll give you about a couple hours. By this time, meet us in the library. We have PD today. I'm on the
Oh,
clock?
you
Oh,
were hired the day.
yeah. There was
You
there was no didn't go back to bed. I was at the school.
you
Didn't even
know
have a backpack, a book, a pen, nothing. Like day one, welcome.
that is the best. I love that story because so many people prepare for interviews, right? They have time to get nervous and they do all, and you
Yeah,
went in there and said like, "No, I'm just gonna," and then you ended up with the job. Did you
yeah.
tell your mom that story?
I don't know if my mom's ever heard the full story, but my principal, I like we still if we talk today, we laugh, and I'll say like, "You remember my outfit?" She'll be like, you got a lot of looks that day." Like then I go to this PD where it's like a, I don't know, instructional literacy training thing. Back when I don't know if you're familiar with the animated alphabet, it was a training for that where like
Mm.
every letter has a, like I don't even remember, like I is Ichabod, Ichthyosaurus, and like there's songs and
Oh, yes,
action.
yes, yes,
It's this.
yes,
So
yes.
now, and I'm sitting at my table, and people are like, "Oh, are you the new para?" Like, because again, my attire is giving we don't
Sure.
believe. And so I remember all the looks, and I'm sitting at my table, and I'm like, "Oh no, I'm gonna be the sped teacher." Like people are like, "Wait, what? Like, where'd you
Yeah.
come in this outfit?" So yeah, and then most people are like, "Didn't you just interview today? Like, how are you already sitting here?" I don't know. I never fill an application, never. To this
Yeah.
day, still don't know. Her name was Paula. That was her name. Do not know how Paula in their HR ever got my cell phone number or ever got anything. I had not even made a phone call to be on anybody's sub list, had not even figured out how to be a sub, done
It
nothing.
was probably your mom. She was probably chatting people up and
But
gave you
but this time, my
information.
mom's still like living 4 or 5 hours away. So that's what's crazy. Is like, so
Yeah.
yeah, so ended up taking the job. They had a whole platform like, sub for 30 days, including Fridays, get this little bonus, make it to 60 days,
Sure.
yada yada. We'll keep interviewing. And that was the agreement. Like, I'll do this. You all agree to keep interviewing people. Because again, I didn't plan to go into special education. Um, and so got to winter break, no applicants in the pool. I said, you know what? Loving these kids so much, I'll stay till May. I'll do it. I'll do this in masters, no big deal. It was great. It was fabulous. And special education in that school was double dipped with ESL as well.
Oh,
I finished the
perfect.
degree. They gave me what I needed, so I was able to leave early, twice a week, get to my class. It began at 3 o'clock. 3:30. They ended the day at 3:45, 3:50. I had to commute to my class. So finish out that year, and the principal came back and I said, "Listen, it was a lot because I it wasn't just like like now different IEP kids get categorized. Like, okay, this is the class for the ones with like maybe
Sure.
autism, and this is the one for like the high behavioral things, and this is the one for like the true learning disability."
Yeah.
It was all grouped together, and I saw different levels of diagnoses that I was like, there wasn't even a textbook in my class about this. Like, I'd never seen
Mm.
a kid with anger pieces like have an eruption and like destroy a classroom where you evacuate
Mhm.
kids. So that's when I knew like, yeah, I could help a kid come down quickly, but I was just in shock half the time, not moving. And so I knew SPED wasn't for me. So end of year meeting with the principal again. So what'd you think? You want to stay on? Like you got your license, you can stay. I said, not gonna lie, I know this it wasn't my calling. She said, great, we got more opportunities. We got a reading and math specialist job opening. We got this, we got that. I said, you know what? Let me take a try at this reading and math specialist
Yeah.
and found my love, discovered quickly, but I am grateful. And even though I did recognize special education was not my calling, not my strong suit in
Yeah.
terms of me feeling like I was at my best for the children. There are many
Mhm.
times I felt like this child would do so much better and have more progress, someone who actually like came in like really strong, like what to look for, the
Mhm.
diagnoses. I'm sitting here flipping through IEP books like, what does this even mean,
Mhm.
right? It sounded good in the basic classes I had. Real time, there was so much more to it that the books couldn't have helped me with, and I just felt like I wasn't the best fit for kids. So I sat down with all the respect in the world for anyone who goes in that
Sure.
field, right? But I did still feel like it was awesome to get to work with kids who hated math. And I think that I made the connection
Mm.
where like, oh, I hated math in second grade, but still wanted to be
Mhm.
kids with IEPs were hating math, and I got to have that space. So I got offered the title reading and math specialist role for it was supposed to be fifth and sixth grade. And by the first quarter, we were expanded all the way from second through sixth grade, mixed groups, and at the same time using the EL degree. So I've got the ESL license, I'm under my belt. And so now we've got that happening simultaneously. So um, I did second through sixth grade, different kids coming in about every 30 to 45 minutes, different group of kids. And it was second through sixth grade intermix. So I might have one group that was like a second grader, a third grader, and two fifth graders. Uh,
Mhm.
Many of them, about maybe half the group in one group, spoke zero English, like kids coming in fresh from a refugee camp in
Sure.
Myanmar, Burma,
Sure.
and multiple languages in one room. So these two might speak Spanish and have no English. This one speaks Burmese and has no English. This one speaks, and so all I've got under my belt to communicate is Spanish. That's it at the time. So it's like I got Spanish, English, teaching, reading, and math, co-teaching with special education teachers, other ESL teachers across grade levels, creating sheltered classrooms. Loved it, and so just discovered that I think my attention to detail I do multitask, but I have to do like I have to reach this point before I go to the next thing. It's like do a little bit here
Sure.
there. So I think in the interventional world, what I learned about myself was that I'm really good if you give me like this is this student's problem, just dig in right here. You can just stay right here in this.
Sure.
I love that. And so the math piece for me was exciting to bring a love of math and like literacy pieces to kids. I love reading too. So yeah, so I did. I loved that first year. Like that was my first time doing a full year in a role since I
Mhm.
had left out of the district this semester. So yeah, so from that point on, I stayed at that elementary school for 6 years. I never left. Same position. All they did was I moved to a different classroom every year. Like they would move my room, rearrange all the classrooms, pack up the room, move it here. Same position, and they might change the grade level. So it did eventually shrink down because again, the country was still growing in ESL support and what that looked like for public schools. So by the time I left teaching there, they were finally to the point of like they had an ESL person for every grade level. So eventually, I got to just focus on fifth grade because they also
Sure.
moved sixth grade into middle school. So it became a K-5 school, K-5 district. I got to focus on fifth grade math skills, fifth grade reading skills, ESL, kids with IEPs, dual identified will come to me. If they just had an IEP, they went to that instructor. But I got to do a little bit of like, kids that were um, higher levels of function in the classroom on
Mm-hmm.
IEPs than the group that I was serving the year before. So yeah, 6 years in that position, loved every minute. And I think my last year there, I always tell people was I felt was my best year of teaching when I
Mm.
left that school building.
So I have two questions for you, and thank you for sharing that story. Because as you're talking, I'm just thinking about that's a lot of energy, a lot of planning, a lot of talking to other teachers to make sure that the second grade teacher is on knows what you're doing, all the things, right? General
Mhm,
education second grade teacher. Th- when you described your experience coming into the school, really, like you said, I came for a conversation, and then you stayed there for the six additional years. So that
mhm.
1 year and then six additional. During that
Well,
time,
that 1 year and 5, so
or
6
one
to
and five,
20,
yeah,
yeah,
thank
yeah.
you. During
Mhm.
that time that you were there, were there other black educators in the building? And also, did you experience or were you offered mentorship programming? I mean, I know that people have mentors that come help because they want to, but was there some type of program that you went to or someone that came to you to support you as you were learning? So that's two questions.
Yeah, so I remember we had, coaches from the district office level would
Mm-hmm.
come in. So the year that I was a special education teacher, my coach and also my soror, Miss Townsend, came from district office and would coach me through like how to support IEPs, helping teaching to the kids' goals. I remember I had that support when I was on that side. Then the second through sixth years, it was like the learning coach model didn't exist yet. So there wasn't a lot of coaching. There was just team meetings. I was asking my teachers, other ESL teachers. A lot of people took me in their wing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but what really helped me have a space to go to, it was two things. Number one, there was a sub in the building, an older black man named Mr. Butler. And one day, Mr. Butler was subbing for my colleague who was ESL for the lower grade levels. We were in a portable together. And so her room was the first room you walked in, then you went down a little walkway and there was a door to my room. So when I would have to leave, I'd walk through her room. And so Mr. Butler had subbed for her one day, and then our other counterpart, Miss Lanier, and so they were all talking. I came out of the room to see like who is this booming deep voice. And I think Mr. Butler was the first black male I had ever seen in that building.
Mm-hmm.
And so they were like, oh, he's a sub, he's filling in for so and so. And so
Yeah.
I remember he was like, how old are you? We had been just, chatting. I joined their conversation, me, the little young buck, and they're like clearly old enough to be my parent. And so they're all talking. I joined in and he was like, how old are you? He got like right in my eyes. He was a really tall man. And he was like, look at me for a minute. And I was like, yeah. He was like, and I said something real jokingly about like, like my age in terms of like, oh, well, my soul feels whatever. I said something about my age and he was like, look at my eyes. And I looked at him and he was like, nah, you got a lot of fire in them eyes. He was like, there's no way you're that old. And so he came back. He filled in for someone for like a couple of days. I think someone was at a training on either his second to last day or his last day. He came back and he's like, I meant to ask you, are you part of the, I don't even remember what it's called, some kind of cohort of black teachers that was through the state and the teacher union? And I was like,
Mm.
no, I don't know anything about that. Like, I'm pretty young. I don't need, like, because in my mind, again, undergrad, what we knew about unions was like, that's where you go if you have like a loss or need like, something.
Yeah.
Right. So he's talking about this union and black teachers and they go to the Capitol and have all this stuff. And I was like, oh no, I'm good. He was like, okay, well, I'm the rep. I help recruit. I really think you should consider it. So I looked into it, and sure enough, not only was there like this whole group of black educators for the state that were through the union groups for support, they had an entire caucus that had their own conference in Salt Lake City, Utah. So then I got put on
Yeah.
what was called, I think it was called the MRP team. It was a
Mm.
it was like the multicultural state something team, MSR team, and they picked people. It was teachers of color from all over the state, small districts, rural districts, urban districts, suburban, and I said, sure, I'll join this team. Flew to Salt Lake City, and my team to this day, I know where every single one of them are. It was stellar. Like we were all young teachers. There were two or three black males, a woman from Cambodia. So yeah, we got to represent the state as teachers of color. It was like once you committed to the team, it was a 2 or 3 year commitment. So
Mm-hmm.
then getting to go to those conferences, that was my first chance recognizing like how scarce black and brown educators were.
Yeah.
not even just black, but even just brown. And
Yeah.
so I was like, man, like I didn't really think about this. So in my school building, it was myself and the speech language pathologist were the only two certified people of color in the whole building. And she had been there for a while. And then there was countless paras of color, paraprofessionals,
Sure.
Native American, black, Asian. I remember the paraprofessional realm was just like you could get representation for so many racial and ethnic groups, but then the teacher identity, it was white and the two black teachers. I
Mm-hmm.
don't remember any other. Well, take that back. By my third year, we did have a Native American certified teacher in the building. I do remember that. And then they did cuts during the big budget crisis of, what was that, 2008 or
Mm-hmm.
2009 across the
Eight,
country.
nine. Yep.
And she was one of the first ones to go because they'd used the last hired, first fired rule.
Sure.
And I remember just being crushed that she was leaving because I had never even thought about any other educators of color outside of black. So to have a native peer with me, and she was just maybe a year or two younger than me, and then losing her, I was like, oh man, like, the speech path that, they share schools. So there would be many a day where the speech path wasn't there, and it was just me, and
Sure.
I would look for Cassie in the hallways or Miss Margaret the para. I knew who to go
Yeah.
greet. But yeah, as far as certified, it was me in the speech path.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. And I'm thinking about, like your connection to the union because someone paused long enough to say, "I think you should do this with the union,"
Mhm,
or like you said, you're looking to see who you can greet, who's there today, and how much that connection is so important to make sure that we see each other in this work,
mhm.
um, that folks don't feel ignored. So you were there for 6 years, but you decided to leave. It sounds like what was or that decision was made for you. So what was that transition like, and where did you go next?
So interestingly, I wasn't trying to leave.
Mm.
My district, under the superintendent's leadership, they were moving into racial equity development. They were on a whole initiative, pull the whole pool of money over to make another budget fund to fund racial equity for actually looking at data. So now we're like 2012, 2013. So my principal, we had a staff meeting. They were trialing this workshop called Beyond Diversity, and they needed to have two staff to volunteer to go. They kind of gave a basic description. I remember being in the library for this meeting, and the description, I was like, I don't know what we're talking about, right? But in my mind, she said a 2-day conference sub provided. I said, sure, put me in there, right?
Sign me up.
I don't know
Yes.
what we're going to, like, sounds fun to me. And so I don't even remember there actually being a hat, but I do remember there was something she was drawing names out of. So names were in there. I remember though, it didn't click with me until a little bit later. Now, whether she did this on purpose or not, I remember that they were picking two people to go. It was me and Jessica, well, now Dr. Jessica. And Dr. Jessica, her dad is Mexican. Her dad was also my college professor and one of my mentors in the Prime program under Dr. King.
Oh
So
wow.
when the program reformatted, it brought her dad, and so now I got exposure to him. Had to connect the dots later on in life. Oh, you're his daughter. Did not know that, because she didn't present with the brown skin. So I would have never picked up, and she had a married last name. So
Sure.
we go to this conference, and I was like, "Whoa! I didn't know you could talk about race like this in the education world." It was
Yeah.
amazing, amazing, amazing. It wasn't even a conference; it was a workshop. It was really like processing through like your own racial identity,
Mm-hmm.
helping even like white folks even think about their race and how it shows up. Not even tied to education. It's like, let's sit back for a minute and take you back to when you were 5, or the first time you heard you were black, or the first time you learned you were white, or whatever it was, right? And
Yeah.
so I was just mind blown, like, and it clicked for me that day. This is what I was trying to get to, and I thought getting an ESO certification was it. It was this. I wanted
Yeah.
to talk about race and how it affects education for the teacher, for the student, and I was like, okay. And my facilitator's name was Mr. Will Walker, and I remember talking to him at lunch, like, how did you even get in this world? Like, how do I get where you're at? Like, I want to talk about
Yeah.
this someday with teachers and about curriculum and seeing myself in the curriculum and the books, and how do I get here? And he was like, hold on, hold on. Like, first of all, it's not just me. I work for a company. I didn't found the company. So he kind of gave me the rundown. And I mean, to that day, I held that. But me and Dr. Jessica would talk later on and be like, now, your dad, like, you didn't identify as a person of color up front, but like, we're the only two. was there actually names in that hat, or she just made us go because of who we are? And
Yeah.
so, yeah, but we ended up getting the spirit. So then the district did sign off on this whole initiative. They hired that company, their consulting company. They brought in that workshop, made it mandatory for all staff. 2-day workshop,
Uh-huh.
and tied it to goals and all these things. And the plan that the company had, Pacific Educational Group, the plan was that there's like different phases the district would have to build out, and one of those phases involved that every school needed to have what was called an equity team, which was
Yeah.
teacher leaders who were being developed. So me and Dr. Jessica got to help launch that for our building. So from that work, um, 2 years in, I'm on the equity team. Now we're ready for, because we were early start school for that. So again, lots of schools in the district, they did phases like first year, these 10 schools are going to start. Next year, these other 10, like get them going in phases. So we hit the phase where it's time to move on to the team that was going to build out to like look at like um, cultural relevancy and curriculum and lessons and teaching. And the district decided, I'm not sure if they had the consultation put in this way, but they needed to form this position at the district office level that was going to help lead this work and support the teams in the building.
Mm-hmm.
So they had launched it, but the I saw it pop up on the website. I think school was starting like that next week, and I was like, oh, well, that's weird. Why would they list a job if someone applies for it? Because it was internal only. And so I didn't think I read it and I was like, this is interesting. Like, who's going to do this job? Like, this is a big job. And so they realized early on, like we posted, school's about to start. Now we're going to have to pull a teacher, like take it off the
Yeah.
website. They
Yeah.
went back to the drawing board. It released again that spring. And so I remember one day, Dr. Jessica had emailed me, hey, can I come talk to you? When are you free? I said, oh, my lunch this time. She came in my classroom. We're sitting there. And I'm thinking, like, I thought she had something big, like something happened with her. I'm all in with my salad. And she says, okay, so I know you've seen the job they're posting. I was like, yeah, I saw it. I thought maybe she wanted, like, talk about who's going to do this, like what we're going to take on. And I was okay. And she's like, yeah, I know you probably love it here, but you really need to go. I'm sorry, what? Who are you talking to? She's like, I mean, you're just so amazing for our team. Like, they need you.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, I'll think about it. She left my room. I didn't think about it. I think the next day, did you think about it? Girl, yeah, I thought it. I hadn't thought it. I didn't go back to the application. Then a couple days later, maybe it was the next week, my principal asked me with me. And we're sitting down. I think we're doing like, she might have thrown like some evaluation stuff in there too that we're going to go over. And she was like, so I know you were so like this is your realm, and as much as I hate to lose you, she's like, it's not very often I recommend someone go on up, but she was like, I have to let you go, like you have to go, I need you to apply. And
It
I'm like,
almost sounds like
well,
you would. Yeah, I'm like. It sounds like they was like pushing you. Yeah, you had like you just said. They told me I had to leave out of there.
yeah.
Interesting. Yeah.
But it was also like, if you remember when I said earlier that last year there, I felt like I hit the prime in my
Yeah,
teaching
you
with
said
my
that.
EL kids.
Yeah.
And so I was like, I'm in my streak. Like, what are you talking about? I gotta go. And all I thought about was when I would see people from the district office come in buildings, it was like they always were on their phones. They're like, I was like,
Sure.
that's not the kind of person like I gotta join that mentality, right? There were so many like
Yeah.
just stigmas I had about being a district leader. And so after a while, so I ended up going to look at the position and what it was going to entail. And I was like, man, I really do like this racial equity work. I feel like I can do something with it. And then when I did my master's thesis, I had did one on just like my thesis was around, does the race of a child influence the teacher's expectation of the child? And so my advisor was kind of like, this is not a thing. And the number of
Mm.
cases got rejected to even do the research. And finally, there was my advisor made some. I asked for a new advisor, got a new advisor for my master's. He connected with a colleague at a school in outside in a bigger city right next door, and so I did my research, and I remember thinking like, "Yep." So then that master is tied to this, and this is about a 3 year gap in between with going to
Yeah.
this workshop. I was like, I knew there was more to this, right? And even the kids, I interviewed 100 high school kids in two high schools, one predominantly Spanish speaking, one predominantly black. I also interviewed 50 staff of all races, and just like it was a qualitative study around just like what are the patterns of how they talked about their students, expectations, experience going there, being in their ethnicity, their race, etc. And so, yeah, I just had this research I had done. Everyone's like, yeah, it's not a thing. It's not a big thing in schools. And then along comes Mr. Walker with this session. It's like, actually, there was more to it, right? So now I'm like, pieces are clicking. So we get to like, I think it was April by this point. It was after spring break. I went back and I said, fine, I'm going to apply. So I applied for it, did my interview. A week later, got the call. They want you. I interviewed with the superintendent, the assistant superintendent, and their entire district leadership cabinet. And got, I don't know how many people I interviewed up against, but I got the job. Hardest interview I've ever done in my life. Like, I sat for the task, the orientation tasking that they do now in interviews, in the lobby, was looking at the task, called my mom. They had set a 15-minute timer, wasn't even doing the task. Called my mom. Mom, they got me here. Like, I'm supposed to plan a workshop and come present it. She's like, the timer's
Yeah.
on? Yes. Why aren't you doing the task? My mom was like, get off the phone. Hung up, call my sister. She was like, wait, now the timer's like at 7 minutes. I haven't done a task. I haven't done anything. I didn't have paper on me. So it was a very hard interview. I wanted to walk out. But I did. I did the task. They left me in the room for 15 minutes, plan the task out, walk me over here, do the interview. And so, yeah, that was the birth of like where I was supposed to be. Like, education in the classroom was always supposed to get me there, I think.
Yeah.
But it took like these two women to come and tell me, like, this is for you. And
Yeah.
again, my that was my second principal I'd ever worked for. And she, even as a white woman, to recognize, like, as a young woman of color, like, this, I've watched you, I've listened to you. I think you need to go. So it wasn't a push out like in the negative sense. It was like an elevation. Like, they were trying to
Sure.
elevate me, and I
Sure.
was like just stuck on like, but I love my kids. I
Yeah.
bonded with the parents. Like, I'm doing great with my reading curriculum. Like, kids are growing. Like, I was just in the bare, like, the weeds of just teaching and in that hub. And I just never saw myself at that level. Like, I knew I never wanted to be a principal. That was never in the docket. It wasn't something I wanted to do. I wanted to be as close to kids as possible. And so the thought of going to this big building over here, and the Big Brother, with the people call it Big Brother. I just was like, oh, I'm going to lose so many teacher friends over this. I
Yeah.
didn't do, but entered the role, and I felt like I had great support to get there, and support when I got there was started out great.
Thank you for sharing that. I have a couple of things I was thinking about as you were talking. One, you talked about your master's thesis, and I remember in a courageous conversations training that I was a part of. So as a teacher, I wasn't training to become an to work with them as a affiliate or anything.
Hmm.
Um, but I remember them talking about the access gap, and I don't know if they called it access at the time. They might have called it
Like,
achievement,
what do they call it?
opportunity gap, achievement gap,
Hmm.
access gap, and how
Yeah,
they were saying that children of color, specifically Black children, no matter what their financial, the income of their families, that they were going to still, according to the data, and you probably
yeah,
talked to other people, they were always going to lag behind, and it wasn't because of the children's lack of understanding or capability, but it was because of bias in the teachers. And so for you to say that that was your master's thesis, and they said no, that's not a thing. And as soon as you said it, I was thinking there was a thing called courageous conversations, because I remember thinking about it,
hmm,
and then going over and talking about finding this space. I just think that's just so interesting that you were writing and thinking about this, and it came to you, right, a place to apply that
hmm,
information in real time. It's really interesting to hear the parallels of you learning about courageous conversations and going to the trainings, and I just keep reflecting back on my own experience and how I felt too, like totally lit up. Like you said, we've
hmm,
had this conversation before about how excited I was about courageous conversations, and in my district, we were like one of the first districts to have that program. I think we were the first district to have that
right,
program,
yep,
maybe, or at least outside of it. Were they in? They were in New York or California? Are they
California,
San Diego or
yep,
something like that? Um, and I was
Post-
just like, yeah, this is so exciting. And then it's like, nah, go back to class and keep teaching math, right? Like,
yeah,
like we're just doing that just because we're required to as a school, and
mhm,
how it would be so great to have had experience where people were like nurturing that versus saying like, yeah, that's just a requirement that we send you to that thing, and but we don't really gonna do that. So go
Hmm.
back to whatever you were doing. Um, so you were at the district level, and that reality, I love that you said, I didn't want to be the one scrolling. I didn't want to lose my teacher friends, but I also knew this is really important for me. How did you make that adjustment? What was that experience like once you got there? I'm quoting here for there.
Hmm.
Did you lose your teacher friends? Was it what you thought it was going to be? Tell us about that.
I remember one of the first, when you have like the whole district PD days, like back to school. I remember the assistant superintendent coming and grabbing. She's okay. I'm going to give you some tips. Number one, don't go sit with your old school. And I was like, what? Like I don't know. Like you got 30 schools packed up in here. Like where am I going? Who am I sit with? Like because I was district wide. Like I'm in all these buildings now. And so she was like, don't sit with your old school. And I was headed to that table. Like I'm going to go find my people. So the first part was terrible. I tell everybody every single day I would wake up in tears to the point that on Fridays, I would go park at my old school and sit in the parking lot, just cry and look at the building. Like I wish I could go in this building. It was so dreadful. And it wasn't because of the folks at the district office. Like my superintendent was amazing. I had great support for like, yeah, go in there, you're the pilot for this position. We never had it before. Just do it. You do what you do. It was a lot of the schools I'd never been in. Like, when I was in teacher world, I knew my staff, my principal, I knew the superintendent's name. Anybody else at district building didn't know him. Any other school, principal, staff didn't know him. Maybe like the people in my position, other schools from like PDs, but that was it.
Yeah.
So every day having to pick like, and I'm one of those people. I'm a introverted extrovert. I have no problem popping up in places, saying hi, speaking to people, bounce around networking. But when it comes to like people I don't know, I require one person I know to walk in the door with me. And this goes for like I have the same mentality for a
Mm,
wedding, a movie theater. So we're gonna move to the movie theaters and you're gonna be late. I'm in the car until you get there. We miss half the movie. I walk in with you. I don't know these people.
mm-hmm.
And so that was to have that as a social layer in this position was tough because my task is now it's not just know who's on these equity teams. The beginning year one, I wasn't even facilitating for the equity team. I wasn't facilitating at all. It was just we don't know what to do with this role. Consultant company said add it, we need you to help us find out what to do with the role. And I would just have to pick schools each. The goal was 4 schools a day to make it through the whole district by the end of the week, if I could. And that was just the brick and mortar, not the virtual school building, not the college career and all these buildings they had. Walking into school, signing with the office, greeting secretaries like, "Hey, this is who I am. I'll be coming around." Going to meet teachers and trying to memorize names and faces and what you do and just talking. And the number of people that were so against this work walking into
Sure.
buildings like, what are you doing here? And so I just had to figure out how to make it work. And so there were some nasty introductions to people that by the time 10 years later, it's like now these are the best interactions ever. But the beginning was rough. It was like some of my colleagues do not want to do this work, and they're
Yeah.
not like they didn't even have any kind of filter for like, I'm gonna tell this black woman how I feel about her and the company we're working with and the workshop and this and that and the data y'all keep showing about our kids in our school district. Like they had no filter. And so I remember just like, all right, beginning of year, I remember walking in the kindergarten classroom and she was already venting about something. I said, you know what? I'm just here to help you with your beginning of school year task. Like you got all these kindergartners coming because kindergarten started like on a half day schedule, delayed or whatever. So
Yeah.
the kindergarten teachers had more time. I just sat down with her. She was going through her to do list and what she had to get done. I didn't even talk about my role with like anything with race. I said, "Oh, I got sharpened 100 pencils. Great. Do you have the sharpener?" And I sat there with her and we just sharpened pencils and talked about her summer. And I just had to learn like, how do you even navigate this space? The district at the time was like 3% of color, and that might be high. It might have been 1 point some or two. But I remember like in of the first year, they ran a story in the paper that they had raised the staff of color by 25%. And the community was like, oh my gosh, the diversity is amazing, right? What the community didn't know was that was 25% of 2%, which is like
Yeah.
8 teachers in the whole district, right? So there was that notion.
Let me ask you a question. Because I keep imagining, you just said, I was in a silo. I worked with my teachers and my folks, and I was comfortable and I knew my people. What kind of shock was that? Because then you started, if you're excited about learning about race and you're excited about telling people, and then you start to see over and over again that people, like you said, are unfiltered in their racism. How did that shift? Like, I understand the strategy that you're using to get in the door to talk about it eventually, sharpen the pencils, building relationships. But that had to be like very disruptive to your mind, your mentality, or like the way you showed up to see, like, oh my God, there's a lot of folks out here who support children, so they say, who are racist. Like, what was that like for you?
And let me tell you, and that was what it took years to unpack that. And it was Tanisha Abdur Salam when I got assigned her as a mentor from PEG that like broke me all the way down to my core and was like, you have some trauma to heal. And
Mm,
what I discovered was I was so in my head about filtering what I said, how I said it. I was tone policing myself. I had to figure out a way to take all emotion out of it. I couldn't even have an excited voice because someone would say I was yelling at them. And so what, but it wasn't just I'm doing these things because of them. In my head, what I knew was I'm the first person to ever have a job like this in this district. And I'm a black woman. This district only has, you know,
12.
20%
Yeah.
color and this many teachers.
Yeah.
And I had to keep thinking of like, if I mess this up, if I do the wrong thing, it can be one mistake. There, all these 2,000 teachers and staff are going to be like, oh, that's how Black women are. So I took on this role of being the representative. So to the point that when I walked into a space, I made sure my phone wasn't visible. I didn't want them thinking I was like typing notes or sending a message to someone about them. I had to like it'd be like, oh, I walked in, did this. Oh, she made this look. Oh, it must have been this. I was so conditioned to have to be on like this super fine line of like if I mess up. And here, but here's where the weight got heavier. So my brother moved to the same city as me, started his family there. Years into this position, I now have a nephew in this school district.
Mm-hmm.
And my first thought was, oh gosh, if they know he's mine, I got to make sure I do this to perfection because I can't have it. And the breakdown for me, he was in kindergarten, and I didn't see it coming. And this is how I knew, like, oh, we got to do something different. Um, I went to pick my nephew up from school because his mom called me and he was in Boys and Girls Club, and they called him to have him come out. And when he came out, he looked so down, and I was like, "Oh God!" Like he didn't say hi, he didn't run and greet Auntie. There was no hugging. Again, he's 5, and we're walking to the car, and he's just head down, and I was like, "Hey, stop! What's wrong?" And so he just starts sobbing and falls into me. So I'm squatted down on the cement. We're not into the car yet. And he's telling about how he got in trouble at school. And I was like, what'd you do? Like, he's talking about his principal, like, she yelled at me. Well, what happened? So he said, yeah, when they called and said I was dismissed because, we had called ahead, like, hey, I'm picking him up today. And by this point, most people in the district found out I have a nephew in the school district.
Mm-hmm.
And again, never imagined I'd had family living in the city with me. So that was amazing for me to have my brother there and have a nephew and be a first time auntie. And to this day, he's
Mm-hmm.
my only nephew. And so he said that, well, someone had went to the door was glass. And so, how kids like the door will be closing and they see if they can run through without having to touch the door. He
Yeah.
did that. Well, in doing that, his foot hit the door. The principal thought he had kicked the glass. So this is him getting dismissed to me. I didn't witness this. It was inside the building. I'm in the locked off foyer part, the waiting area of the school. So this exchange where he believes she had yelled at him. And my nephew's a kid that very much wants to do what's right. But I could not understand, like, I'm asking, like, well, did you mean to kick the glass door? He was like, no, the door just hit my foot. I didn't mean to, Auntie. I didn't mean to. And again, 5-year-old crying,
Yeah.
sobbing,
Yeah.
right? And so I'm just like, okay, okay. Like, and parents are walking by to go get their kids, like, what's going on with this kid, right? And so I said, all right, I'm just going to ask. I just don't understand why you're so upset. Like it was an accident. You told her, okay, well, maybe, principals can be in like busy world. Maybe something happened with her. It's not your fault. And then he starts telling me how sorry he is and he's apologizing to me. I said, okay, well, Auntie doesn't understand. Like, you didn't hurt me. Like, I'm fine. And he said, Auntie, I know the job you do. And if I'm bad, the teachers, they're not gonna listen to you. And oh my gosh, we're in
Mm,
front of this school and now I'm crying and I was like, oh my baby, like, oh my gosh, what's happened? And I
yeah.
remember thinking like that never left me like, okay, we gotta figure this out because my nephew is in the threshold of this now. And I remember he would tell me like, oh, the teacher would be like, oh, I know your auntie or your auntie's my friend. And I remember teaching him like, Erlen, ask one of my favorite colors. They don't know if they're my friend. And so he used to like fire those things back to teachers in first grade and kindergarten. They would come tell him, oh, I saw your nephew. Does he always do? And so I didn't know that he'd taken that on as a weight. And at
Yeah.
5 years old, I was like, it was supposed to be this way. Like in my mind, it's like I should stay in the classroom, right? But yeah, that's so yeah, he was born. I think when he was born, I stayed at that school 2 more years. So by like I said, so he yeah, so my by my second year of this role, he's in school now in the district.
Yeah.
And I just didn't see it coming. But that's what I was carrying in the back of my mind the whole time. And then he put words to it at the age of 5 for me. So I didn't make the connection on my own the first couple years. It was my nephew, and then I got assigned a
Yeah.
mentor year 3 with PEG, and Tanisha and my nephew, I put the 2 together and realized this is why I felt so boxed up when I walked into schools.
Yeah.
Um, the comparison analogy I would use to people is like, yeah, when I go to work, the air there is like the pollution. When I get to my house and in my car on the way there, I'm in the fresh air. That's the air I can breathe myself and breathe naturally to go to work every day. It was like I got to put on this mask and breathe this, like to make sure I don't get contaminated by this air, but it was like a way to mask myself. But it was always about in that space and that role, I wasn't just protecting like me, I felt like I had to protect every single black and brown teacher who believed in the work the way I did because if anything I did got misinterpreted, that was going to be they would feel the burn of it in their classrooms, in their teacher lounges. So yeah, I held on to that because it was me. Um,
Mm,
my greatest resource by year 1, we would go to the DELT meetings, the district equity leadership meetings, and the Native American student service coordinator, I caught like from jump. We were the only 2 in that room in those meetings, like discussing all things equity across the district, all the hard conversations, all the what are we going to push principals to do, ask our teachers to do, make changes for this or that. We were the only 2 in that room who well, we weren't the only 2 people of color. There were other district admin of color. We were the only 2 in that room that did not have administrator license. So it was more likely that we would say the deeper perspective pieces and be ignored, or they'd like want us out of the room. So when we recognized that unspoken in the room one day, we made eye contact, and from that day on, we knew to sit by each other. Like we were the people in that room that were going to have each other's back because we knew we're the ones that are we're able to be removed because we don't have the licensure. We're not district admin. We're not principals. We're not this or that. We have this certificate and we're able to do this job here. And we get the pleasure to be in this room with all these big timers um, that we don't have. And so we had to find ways to support each other. So yeah, so the term from that moment on became my person. And I remember telling her, "You're my person." Like
yeah.
figuring out when I give you this look, jump in and take over from about to have a meltdown. When you give me this, like we would meet and go to her office and have these conversations. And that was how I survived that building, even though her
Yeah.
office wasn't there in that building.
I'm gonna you and I met through Stacy Brandon, correct?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Your story and Stacy's story are so similar
Mm-hmm.
across 2 different states, and the way that Stacy would talk about it's like I
Yeah.
wonder how Glenn Singleton. I wonder if he understands the amount of racial battle fatigue that people who were trained under his programming, not that it's his fault, but programming have taken on and the ways that it impacted the families and communities of the people who took on this work,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because you're a shield to a lot. And and so is Stacy, right? And I just think about you all. So it's a several of you that Julia Berry. I've just
Mm-hmm.
interviewed so many people who worked for that organization and worked in schools, and the amount of like harm that people experience. Um, Not even at his organization necessarily, maybe they did or didn't, but at their schools or in their districts.
Yeah.
And so I'll ask you a question. Thinking about your nephew, thinking about the teachers, thinking about your colleagues in the struggle. At that time, what were you doing to take care of yourself?
The only thing I had in the professional space, it was the one task I was given off the PEG framework by the superintendent to go knock out. They had skipped the staff of color group that should form in phase, I think it was 1B. 1A was like implementing beyond diversity and bringing your district folks through it. 1B was staff of color. Then phase 2 was care teams. They had skipped that phase. They skipped it because it happened long before the position was designed. Superintendent didn't know what to do with it, nor does his cabinet. So they skipped it, moved on. When I came in, they're like, if you want to do it, launch it. I got selfish. So I had the choice to launch staff of color. Um, I told my superintendent, an older white male, that always had my back, always had my back. I said, yeah, I'm going to launch that phase. I'm going to
Mm-hmm.
investigate. So they said, okay, well, you call PEG, you figure out what it does, how you start it, what you do. We'll help you plan it. We'll do whatever. But when I told them I was taking that on, like, again, year one, trying to figure out this role, what it does, how I'm going to operate in it, to tell them like this is what the job should be. We have the skeleton bones of a job description. I didn't really have tasks to do. The task was every week I went to Delta and reported back. This week, here's all the things I did. That's what the first year was. So to take on this task, my thought was I gotta find, because again, remember they released a study that like year one, the teacher of color population has grown.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to, because according to the percentage, it said now there should be 90, it was either 93 or 96 teachers of color across the whole district. Me, I'm over here, okay, so and so, me, you, I got to like six.
Yeah.
Where these other nine teachers at? So I said, okay, we got to make this group because if there's
Yeah.
96 of us out here floating, I need to see the people who look like me. And so for
Yeah.
me, I thought, oh, if I get to make this group and it's my job description to make this group, I can get my support. So that was
Yeah.
my first task. I decided, okay, beyond get to know teachers and know my equity team people, I was going to help get staff of color started. And that's exactly what I did. But it
Okay.
was for me. I wasn't even worried about the district phase map. It was for me. Because
Yeah.
again, now my time on the MRT team, that's what it's called. The MRT team was over. My term on that was up, and it was up before I even got to this position. So now I have nowhere I'm going to have direct, like a mob of people like me. So no MRT anymore. There were no teachers on MRT in the district with me, in the city with me. They're
And
all,
remind folks, MRT is a union group.
yes, it
Uh
was the
huh.
multicultural resource team for the state.
Yeah.
Mhm. Every
Yeah.
state.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was, so now there's been a 2-year gap from my time on that team being up. And then even by this point, I want to say 2 years after my time was up, the states got rid of them. They don't even exist anymore. They changed the name and everything. Like it's like this whole multicultural. Yeah, it's very different. It might be completely gone all the way now. But so yeah, this is my first chance to put something like that back in effect without having to fly to Salt Lake City once a year or without
Mm-hmm.
having to go wherever they put that conference. So I went for it. I was like, okay, this has to be the task
Yeah.
because I'm not doing well up here and I'm one of 4 or 5 faces and the other 3 people have high licensure, the superintendent, all this stuff, director stuff. I have to find the people on the ground who have the licensure that matches mine. Like this isn't gonna work for me.
Yeah. Thank you. On the so thinking about that experience, and you're not there now. What
Mhm.
was it? How long were you doing the work in that district at that capacity? And again, the same question I asked before. Like, what? How did you know? Maybe it was your nephew. Maybe it was accumulation of things that it was time to do even something beyond that. Because you mentioned in the beginning, like, yeah, I did this, and then I was at the district, and then I did this work, and then I'm doing the freedom schools. So, but what was it? Because you were lobbing them back to them. You were
Mhm.
joining the care team, making care teams, and then putting them together. But what was the thing that said it was like, I think I'm done right now. I think I'm going to do something else.
The start of the thing was a change in administration. The superintendent who led the equity work brought it, like locked it in division from the another staff member that had been there higher up. He retired and went on to be like a coach for superintendents and also teach at a college. Um, That was a heartbreaking day for me. Matter of fact, myself and my person, when that retirement was announced, that resignation, we didn't go to work that day. It was a day of grief for us. I remember the
Mm.
assistant superintendent calling me and saying, "You do whatever you have to do." Um, when they announced the new superintendent, I was like, "Oh, I guess I got to stay," because this was someone who was supposed to be on the district equity leadership team, had gotten away with not coming to those meetings for over a year. As soon as they announced him, he came back to a meeting that day. We hadn't seen him in years, in the whole year. No meetings, no nothing, like no connection to work. So the question was always, okay, well, how are we going to move this work forward with him as our leader? Who picked him, right?
Mm.
Uh, and I got to be not a part of the interviews, but I was positioned to be able to see the candidates up for the role at that time in passing. So they had me facilitate a small workshop out in like an open area, and they would escort them through on the different rounds of their interview. They would move them from this group to this group. And so I got to see the candidates come through. So one of them, they were backed up in time. He couldn't go in the room. He sat in my session, got to ask questions. Um, Man of color from Minnesota, didn't get the job. Another woman, I think she's from like Chicago, maybe came through, didn't get the job. Internal candidate gets it.
Of course.
Someone that we already knew was not in that work with us, was not with us ever in that work. um, Year one, stuff was crumbling fast. Like we knew
Sure.
on day one, we don't have the superintendent that brought this work in, and people that were on the ground waiting for the work to go away got excited. He became a one and done superintendent, and then we ended up having to go with the interim superintendent next year, first ever person of color in the role. But again, things were like the downfall was already happening. That didn't really shift too much because the depth of work individually, that is what I perceived anyway. The depth of work individually to be leading that role as an interim and a person of color for a district that was already kind of like half in this mindset of like, we need to get rid of this work and half that we need to do it, wasn't going to be great anyway. There was a lot of tension there between me and this leader anyway. And then, so then to go from that, we then move on to they run another year interim. We go on to a full time superintendent. So, now we have our first ever full time black male superintendent. And I thought, okay, I'm going to stay. This is going to be great. I need to be able to be here to back him. First couple of years were kind of a honeymoon. And then next thing I know, I start watching people get moved around to positions and bringing people in that know nothing about the work, making jobs up that, and then like they put someone above me, but they advertise the position. My affiliate teammates, my affiliate team that we had been able to build across those last 3 years, asked me, the superintendent, like, hey, we saw you launch this position. Now, mind you, I had read it. It didn't cross my mind to apply for it because I saw at the bottom they had that you must have the superintendent's license. I thought that was weird. So my team wanted to meet with the superintendent, talk about it. And this is when I knew that it was definitely time to consider something different. So they're bringing the position in. Our affiliate team leader had met with our team, like, hey, there's some changes coming. I want you all to be aware of it. She said she couldn't tell us much, only the superintendent could. So my team asked to meet with him, and we're going through this. And so at the time, like people were telling me that even some principals thought I was going to get the job. It was going to be given to me. People were telling me like, "Oh, I can't wait to work with you next year. It's going to be exciting." And I'd be like, "What are you talking about?" Like, "Oh, this job, it's for you, right?" Not that I know of. So my team is asking questions. So today's Wednesday. You just took it down offline yesterday. What do you mean you're interviewing tomorrow and Friday, and you plan to announce a candidate by Monday morning at the board
Mm-hmm.
meeting? Um, there were just things in the conversation didn't make sense, right? Like, for example, he said, like, we're going to interview all weekend if we have to. Interim superintendent raised our eyebrows, like, I'm not interviewing weekend, right? So stuff, it started looking real sketchy. So then in this space, my white peer says, I guess I'm just concerned as to, in this process, why aren't the affiliates being utilized to be in these interviews, maybe help
Yeah.
edit questions, things like that, to get the most qualified candidate for this position if you're going to put them over us. And he basically told her in a nutshell, you know, you are taking this affiliate work too seriously. The example that he gave to like leverage this with her was, you guys aren't affiliates. who happen to be teachers, your teachers who happen to be affiliates. He was like, that status can come and go as needed. And she says, back
Mm.
again, this is the only white person on this call. Everyone else on the team is of color, black women. And she says, oh, never back Denver. She's like, no, I'm going to take this affiliate work with me wherever I go. If I choose to not be a teacher, I'll be a plumber with an affiliate. That's what it
Yeah.
is. He tried to leverage and say no. He was in a Greek letter organization. He said, I'm not a Greek letter organization member who just happens to be a superintendent. I'm a superintendent who just happens to be in my, and then I was like, ooh, that's that's different, right? Because black Greek letter organizations, you carry that for life until unless you renounce it.
Yeah.
That's not so I was in the meeting. I'm just like, oh, so she kept going because at this point, I think she knew, and this is how strong of a team we built. Is one of two white women on the team, but the only one in that meeting. She knew my black women colleagues in the space. I gotta step up and like it's for me to take
Yes.
this black man on. And she knew how to do it with grace and also a way to have the conversation cross the racial lines as a white woman to a black man. She knew how to do it. And she
Pause.
said, hmm
Pause. This is the first time I think I've heard you say this is a black man.
yeah, yeah. So it went from interim. So I might have said it too fast, but I did say interim went from interim superintendent, first black woman,
Oh, you
to
did
first
say
other
this.
black male.
You're right.
Mhm.
Honeymoon
Yeah,
period. Then everything started to fall
yeah,
apart.
yeah. So he was basically saying, you're asking too many questions. Do you not trust me? So now we go around the call and he's asking each person by name. Danica, do you trust me? So and I said, with the protocols we've been asked and we've been trained on for all these years and to do, no. Um, your vision for the district, sure, right? He's calling people up and I do you trust me? We go through the whole like all six people get asked this question. So then my colleague says, I guess I just don't understand if Danica was in the role from jump, you're bringing in a new role that goes even above her, that's going to be over her. Why would you just not position her to have the role? And he said, mind you, I've barely talked this meeting. I think I'm because my goal was to be a listener. I really wanted to hear like what is about to happen here because again, we've been tipped off about this shift and like a individual phone calls like, hey, y'all need to meet with him, da da da. So I needed to know what was going on. So my goal was to be a listener, but I was already kept like it didn't feel good. And he said, there is no work that Danica has done in this district that would allow me to give her favoritism to just hand her this role. I know the quote exactly because he repeated it twice. By the second time, I had grabbed my notebook and pen and wrote it down. Still have the notebook that's written to this day. And I knew I wasn't going to talk the rest of that meeting. Like I had no.
Mm.
You told me where you stood, and that's all I needed to know. That was when I knew I'm going to spend the rest of this year figuring out what I'm going to exit on. New director of whatever the title was. It was a long fan title with all the buzzwords. Equity was in the title, inclusion, this, all them buzzwords in the title. She comes in. Um, they built a whole team around her. From day one, I took my summertime off that I'm given in the role, which was about 6 weeks, not the same as the teachers on the ground. Came into emails and just very, very harsh start. By August 1, I was already in HR. Um, like, we don't want you to do the PD orientation. We need you to be here in this meeting. Oh, but I'm the only one trained to do this workshop for the staff. And it's supposed to be an orientation for all new hires to get their launch
Mhm.
into racial equity work.
Mhm.
Didn't go to that. Now I'm considered non-compliant. That was the first day of that new year. And so I knew that year if I make it to the end of this contract year, this has got to be my last one. The honeymoon phase is over. This is not, I'm not a representative standing in the gap for anybody anymore except for the children. But in that space, I'm still taking blows left and right. Um, and so the final threshold for me came. Of course, budget things happen, schools get closed, but the district itself was in such shambles in terms of leadership, vision, decisions, actions, just all over the place. There's things happening on the media, you name it. And I think my final take when I knew like I'm yeah, this is definitely it. I I don't even have to I don't even need a backup plan was the public had started a Facebook page to discuss their disgust with the announcement to close one of the schools on the east side of the city, which was where more of the black and brown students were going to school at anyway. And the school was going to be closed. That same school, I had proposed maybe let's look at a freedom school model, right? And teachers, principal go to this meeting because I wasn't even being invited to the meetings about like school closing, renovating it, like, picking a different way to run this school. Like the goal was they need to find a way to bring back numbers because they were losing so many kids and tents in the whole district. And the principal from that school shared that in one of these meetings or whatever. Apparently they chewed her out for bringing it up, told her I didn't know what I was talking about. You couldn't have a year-round freedom school; those don't exist. But they did because we had a board member who had founded one in Texas.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so she comes back and tells me like, yeah, they shut me down. He said you're not talking about blah blah. So now they agree this school is about to close or whatever, and they make this page called Save Our Schools. I don't I learned early on this position, never read the comments, don't find the Facebook group. Social media is not my outlet anyway. And people start screenshotting me comments in here and they are talking in this group. And so one of our staff members from the virtual school had commented, people are screenshotting me. She had said, like, they're talking about the superintendent and this director lady that he brought in. They're calling them all kind of names, like all kind of racial. And again, some of these parents, like, hardcore racial warriors, white families, they're using all the language that like you may be well intended, but the racism still running thick, right?
Sure.
And like
Yes.
learn, and this is another lesson. Like as a white ally advocate, how do you advocate against black and brown people who are in the wrong, causing harm to people without racism, right? This a whole
Yeah.
dissertation right here because when you confront them on that, there was other pieces. So one of our staff members, a white woman who I've been to bat for her brown son in the schools many times, um, followed this kid from fifth grade up to high school or middle school now, with issues around race and his teachers, and been with her every step of the way in meetings, all these things. She was like, well, in the comments on this page, she's telling the families, you all keep talking about the two main leaders, but I know Dr. Moore and she's not with them. And this lady said, who's that? Now, mind you, my name's been all over the paper for all kind of stuff, not the same things they were being paid for, like, stuff in schools. I've been interviewed for different things I'm doing in classrooms, all these things. And the lady said, I don't know who that is. Sound like three coons in a trench coat to me. So now someone has resigned a district, or someone's moving on to another district. Interim superintendent's left, and she's building the team over in her new district and bringing people over. So
Mm-hmm.
now they're having goodbye donuts or whatever. I'm in the line. It's two-sided table across from the superintendent. I look at him and he said, I think said like, "Hey, how are you?" or something like that. Conversation is real scarce with us anyway at this point. And I said, "Oh, I'm good." I said, I'm trying to process. Have you heard about these comments about us online? Like, I'm not the one closing these schools, and like they're talking about y'all, but I got caught. They said three. This me, you, and her. Because again, director's woman of color too, older black woman. And he said, I heard something about that. I'm gonna meet with you, and I'm gonna help you process this. By the end of the
Oh,
day,
really?
I get an email to go to the director's office, who is now supposedly my evaluator, my supervisor, whatever you want to call
Yeah.
it. I'm This is the end of the day. It's like 4 o'clock. It's time to go home. So she asked me to come to her office. I thought it was gonna be something quick. So she told me to sit down, close the door. So she was like, well, yeah, I just want to let you know. He came to me, told him about the whole thing, and you feeling some kind of way. So I told him, don't even worry about it. I'll meet with her. Now again, I have no text or email saying, hey, Danica, never mind, meet with her instead. She'll process with you. Um, I don't even remember what started what, but I remember where I knew, like, I'm not sure how we got here. She said, now I just need you to grow thicker skin. You're black. You're supposed to go through racism. She pulled out a paddle. Again, we're in the district office. She pulls out a paddle. It has the N word etched across it. It says N word beater. She puts it down in front of me. She's sitting on the edge of her desk. She's like, take a look at this paddle. I look up. I'm crying tears of anger, right? Like just rage coming out my eyes, right? It's not even sadness. I'm just mad. I said, why is this in the building? This is a reminder for us. About what? When I was the first ever principal in this podunk district over here in this state, the kids made this for me because that school hated me so bad. And you have that on display here for what? To remind me of who I am, where I'm supposed to be in my place, or whatever she said. I said, oh. I said, well, yeah, well, you and I aren't the same. So then she starts taking memorabilia off all these shelves, like, this is my 7 times great grandpa. He couldn't read. He couldn't do this. Da, da, da. He went through this. You think he was worried about racism? No, he's worried about surviving. This is my, so there's just pictures all over the office. She's taking stuff down. So we hit the final straw because she went after the whole, like, I'm supposed to go through racism. I said, if that's the case, why are we doing this work? Why are we in schools helping teachers recognize their own biases and the authentication of curriculum and making it culturally relevant, telling the real histories of things? Why are we even doing this for kids? I thought it's about the kids. She said, I heard you had a nephew in this district, and I just feel so sorry for him. I have a, I never heard this term before. She said, I have a great goddaughter, and we raise her for a world that's going to make sure that she gets treated this way. And it is a shame that your nephew is raised in a family where he is not being taught the realities of what he's supposed to go through. So I hope that I can't wait to cross paths with your nephew. What school does he go to again? My nephew's in middle school by this point. He's a sixth grader. I said, that's information you will not find from me. I said, if I even hear about you in his school asking about him, you'll have to deal with me. And you don't want me to call the rest of my family. That was when I knew we were done.
Yeah.
That was the day. Superintendent never came back to me, check on me. Hey, did she talk with you? Nothing. That was supposed to be the conversation that made me feel some sort of better about being called three coons in a trench coat attached to those two and their decisions and their leadership and what they've been displaying for all these white folks in our whole community for this whole time. That was what that was supposed to be. Um, I ended up filing a massive complaint against both of them. In the hearing, whatever you want to call it, the investigator said, and then mind you, this hearing goes into June and July. I hadn't resigned on paper, but I knew I wasn't coming back. I'd already told staff of color, like, next year you got to pull the script together on your own. I don't know what they're gonna do. It's not gonna be me. I told my staff of color that. They would have known had they come to the end of year staff of color event. They left the staff waiting to do their end of year toast, left them waiting, no phone call, text, we're not coming, nothing. I tell staff of color this. They could have heard if they'd been there, they weren't. So I told the staff, we get to June, July. Matter of fact, it's like July 3rd, we're in the final hearing to, like, give the ruling or whatever against my massive complaint. I utilized the union, legal team did all these things. And the so the whole thing is the superintendent has to be able to come in that space and give, like, the final, this is what we're gonna do with the situation. The goal was get me out from under her team, remove her, maybe remove yourself, maybe I'll stay. That was what was in my head. They didn't know that part yet. Nor did the legal people didn't know that I was leaving. No, the whole thing was like, go through it. They found out in June I was leaving, the legal team and the union folks. They called me. You can't announce publicly you're leaving. Why not? If you announce, they can drop the whole thing. So we'll keep it quiet that you're leaving. I had already known I was leaving. So I had to keep it quiet for June and July. Matter of fact, moved in June, did everything virtually. They had no clue I wasn't even in the state anymore. We get to July 3rd, and they said the whole ruling was nothing. They found no fault on them. I had 67 pages of things I had submitted, including text messages, emails, including text messages that came while I was out of the country, threats by phone, all from the director. They wasn't going to move it. Superintendent came through and ruled and said the issue of the tension between Dr. Moore and her is simply because Dr. Moore has forgotten the uh, duties of her job description. So, what I'm going to rule for the final pieces is I will personally meet with Dr. Moore at the start of the school year. We'll review her duties and things, and then we can start the year fresh and like she'll know exactly what we want to do and what we don't want to do. Because this whole time they've been scaling back my duties. I was no longer allowed to work with principals, no more coaching of principals, no more e-team workshops at district office 2, 3 times a year. I have to be escorted through school buildings now to even walk through buildings and meet with teachers and just observe classrooms, just do pop-ins and check-ins. That last year, it was like I was in prison in my own job. It was terrible.
Mm.
Um, Pandemic actually saved me getting to be home and do everything virtual. It saved me because it's what I've gone through the whole time. So um, I said, okay. So I'm just going to pause right there. I said, if that is the case, if we're saying all this stuff that we've sent you, if that's the case, then you don't even have to finish this out. I'll make it easy for you. So the investigator paused everything and said, can you just walk us through, on because the I don't know if you ever seen the way you have to make the formal complaint. You have to like make your bullet points, but you have to hone it on like three major, like these are my three themes, and you can't have more
Mm-hmm.
than three. There was a whole structure you have to write it in. So I have my three things. Then on the very last page, page 67, you put your like conclusions and the recommendations that you're wanting to make the three things more intact, right? So my second main issue was the lack of support. First was just like not being able to do the job duties, like limiting my skills, all these things. The middle one was like the support piece of the job. So they asked me to say in this little hearing or whatever, well, you mentioned no support, but on her little memorandum thing here, she's listed all the ways she supported you. So because you said that there was no support, you gave no examples, why don't you just tell the whole panel here, tell us an example of how she supported you? And I said, oh, okay, sure. So I tell the story about the office and the inward beater. The
Yeah.
whole again, that was in the whole affidavit.
Document. Yeah.
They hadn't read it. They didn't read any of it. They hadn't read any of the 16 pages, but they led this hearing. He starts flipping the packet like, what page was that on? This was in the packet. Again, this is the final. We're going to make the decision, like what's going to
Mm-hmm.
happen. This is the final. We're going to consequences or whatever's going to be done. And they haven't read the packet. We started this whole thing in April. The whole thing was done in May and it's handed off to them. There are three copies kept on file. One goes to HR, the union legal team has one, and the investigator has one. And you make sure that they don't lose it. Then we have our own. This 67 pages, all the claims have not been read. So now we're in this hearing, flipping through, like, I didn't see that. This what happened. And now everybody's looking at you like, what in the world? Like,
Yeah.
but we still end and say she's not at fault. The issue is I didn't know my job description. I was trying to do above what my job called for. But how did my nephew get brought in this? What's I got to do with my nephew, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so on the stand, I resigned effective immediately. Um, the investigator couldn't believe it. Everybody just stopped talking, and he said, I don't do this often, but Miss Moore, I've seen the work you've done for years. And this might be the most heartbreaking resignation I've ever experienced. Investigator is a white man. He said, because what you do isn't just a job. He said, what you do is a calling. He said, now I got to sit with this for a minute. You sit with the all you want. I'm taking it back. So flew back at the end of July because I still had their laptop and everything, iPads, all the tech was with me. Again, I've moved. They didn't know it. I fly back in July. I got them to agree to let me do a final summer work day with one of my e-teams. I did that work date, announced to that team that I really was out. That was my first team I got to tell. They had my email cut off the next day. Couldn't even tell the rest of the district. 2 years into being gone, still getting emails from teachers like your email bounced back. So I found you on social media, LinkedIn. Can you come to my classroom? Because they didn't rehire behind me. It sat vacant for years. They made up a whole new position that combined her old role above me and mine into one just last school year. So they're on year two of that. So yeah, but yeah, that's how I knew it was time to go. Um, the phrase I hung with was when it began compromising my values and my sole purpose, it was time to go. And I, if I'm being honest, I stayed about 3 years too long. But at the same time, everybody knew I wasn't leaving my nephew in that district. I was not.
Yeah.
Like he's still there. He's in high school now. but he's got language and words, and he knows you can pick up the phone. But in the baby phases, the 3 years, and the number of things that I did and didn't do, and put him at the priority of it, even like in personal life. Like if I wanted to go move away because I wanted to, oh, my nephew, like I did that for a long time. But the 3 years I stayed, I needed to make sure he was gonna be good too, because he was in the school I'm supporting. I know what happened to him if I was in that role. So I had to stay in my mind. Even with a stellar affiliate team behind me, I had to stay. And my team knew it too. I would tell them all the time. Like I had actively applied for jobs throughout those 3 years. Um, it wasn't even like not getting a job or interview. The dream role I wanted, it was a simple thing of the wrong number on the application. So when they called the wrong number. I was in California conference. By the time I found out they had called the wrong number, it was like 2 weeks past the time they wanted to interview me. So I sobbed about that dream job for a whole school year. Every time, I'm not supposed to be here. It was supposed to be this
Yeah.
way. And my team be like, "What are you talking about?" Like, "Oh, it's okay." So yeah, there was action, but it was like looking for jobs is a full-time job these days.
Yeah, it
So
is.
trying to have the mental and emotional stability to keep going to work every day and look for a job and then get off work and feel like I had free, like my me time, my self preservation time for like, going on a walk, going on a run, going to play volleyball, writing a poem, reading a book. That wasn't there. It was just work and sleep for years. And then in the middle of all this, I'm also like, my doctorate was new. It was the last year that I was there, was when I defended. So
Mm,
all of this was happening in those 3 years. I buckled down and said, I'm getting a doctorate too. So
mm,
there was a lot with a mother who was sick, um, couldn't even tell her I was in my doc program. She found out I was in my doc program the day I defended. My sister was the only person in my family who knew I was back in school. And I kept it that way because I knew that my mom would feel like we had bogged her down, or that she was holding us down with her health reports and things. So, yeah, so I made sure that I went to my sister, like, hey, I'm about to do this thing, but here's what I need from you. Like, here's the things you can do. Here's things you can't do involving our mom. Like, I need this protected. It's between me and you. If something pops up and we need to go to the hospital, I might be in class. It's going to be on you. And so, yeah, my sister was the only one that I knew that I was back in school and going through all this and work every day. My mom knew about a lot of work stuff, but not all of it. To the point that my classes at night, I would tell her I was in a meeting. That's all. I'm in a meeting, mom. So my mom and her mom was like, I remember she would say like, "These people are working you to death, and then they treat you so bad. Why are we still there?" Like, so for it to come full circle
yeah.
for her, like, no, mom, I was trying to get this degree so I could do what I need to do and go to the next thing.
Yeah.
Um, that's where it came from. The degree, going back to school, formed out of this space of, after being limited for so long, I decided I got to get some more credentials. Maybe they'll take me seriously then. Like,
Hmm.
this new leadership role was not taking me seriously for my skills. It was drastically different. So the solution was to go back to school. If I get this credential instead, then I can do something with it. So school was also like some kind of pseudo solution that in my mind was going to fix everything.
Did
So
it? Did
then
it
the
fix
last year I
everything?
was Dr. Moore and nothing changed. It got worse.
Of course, it got worse. Of course, it got worse because now you have even more education, and now they're more intimidating, right?
Yeah.
Um, that's a lot. That is a lot of story. Um, I really appreciate you sharing that. Um, and to know we still have a little bit more left to share. Um, mm, 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 mm. I just keep going back to like now I'm curious as to like the what happens to the folks who do not just courageous conversations, but like work like that across the country. Like
Mhm.
where are they now? Where are y'all up to? What have y'all been up against? How are y'all healing? What does the wellness look like now? That's something to be investigated, right?
Yeah.
Especially because of this cognitive dissonance that it's like, I thought I knew you as a teacher, and now I'm talking about race, and now I see that this is how you really believe it, and the grief that must come from that,
Oh yeah. Yeah.
right? And it's different, maybe than having the same type of job in like banking or real estate, because you're not talking about kindergartners and 5 year olds and right, you're talking about grown adults and having conversations with grown adults who may have their own families, but it's just not the same. I would, yeah, my
Yeah.
the need to know how folks took care of themselves or are taking care of themselves if their job still exists, the implications, the health implications, the mental health implications, the relationship implications
Yeah.
from standing in that gap, like you just said, over and over and over again, and then just being like pushed out and gaslit. And then does anyone ever go back and check on these folks? You know what I mean?
Mhm. One of the things that I remember in the middle of my term at district office, in between superintendents, um, Tanisha Abdul Salam told my evaluator because they had, well, she was over the affiliate team. She wasn't really she was my evaluator. Like they would put me with her, then take me with someone else. And so, but she was over the affiliate team. And when Tanisha would come to visit and we do like all of our coaching and our virtual sessions weekly, I remember so there was a time where they wanted Tanisha to sit with the affiliate team lead, who actually didn't even go through the full affiliate process, and kind of like watch how Tanisha debriefed us after Beyond Diversity, like in the middle of Beyond Diversity at lunch and those things. And she took out her little notebook and Tanisha kind of had to let her know, like, you can put that away because you can't do what I do. And I just remember thinking, like, yes, get her. And so when we were doing our 101, we were processing different things. And Tanisha said, Danica, you got to lock in on you. She said, I will come back here to this city for your wedding. I will come back for a graduation. I'll come back for a birthday. She said, I will not come back to bury you.
Mm,
And then she told our district leader that in the meeting. She said, I just want you to know, I told Nika this. I'll come back for to celebrate her for anything that she can do and what she does. But she said, I will not come back to bury her when y'all help kill her. She
mm,
told me that. And then when she left our next one on one with my evaluator, she was trying to like slyly ask, like, so what have you and Tanisha been discussing? Like, I noticed this comment she made. And I was just like, you know what we've been discussing, but just the impacts of this work on Black women specifically and in health. It, yeah. And at the time I didn't know what Tanisha was saying. I really didn't.
yeah,
It
yeah,
didn't phase my mind. I might have barely been 30 at that time. But then like years down the road to see the data coming out, it's like, that's why she kept saying she wouldn't come to bury me. So for
yeah,
me, when I got the doc degree, I still felt like I was trying to be like someone was trying to bury me, but I was so proud of that doggone degree to like to get it with all that I had went through. Um, she was the first person I let her know I got my doc. I was like, I sent a little picture my invitation because I was like, you don't have to come bury me, but it was like,
yeah,
even though I still feel like the dirt's still being done, but it's like that was like a small faint of hope in the midst of this abyss of darkness. But
yeah,
yeah, those I would say my last 3 years there were very dark, and all of my self preservation came from the connections made at Staff of Color, my affiliate team, and outside of work, everything was about my nephew. Like the innocence and joy of my nephew. If I could just hear him laugh, that was where,
yeah,
like, if I was with my nephew, the world didn't exist. It was just me and him all day, or family. Um, Being able to go back to my ancestors, my grandparents' hometown, their neighborhoods and things, just walking those streets, like all of my preservation came from digging into the ancestors. And that I think that got stronger for me once the pandemic started because I think I don't remember her name. I do remember she came from PEG. She came to help with one of the leadership workshops. It wasn't Beyond Diversity. I don't remember her ethnicity, but um, I know she came from like the Pacific Northwest corner. But she had posed this question to the room about When did you stop hearing the music? When did your feet stop dancing? And then I believe Cortland added more language to it around being able to get back to your original medicine. And I did an interrogation through a workshop with him about original medicine. I discovered my original medicine tied to the use of my hands. I'm not big on gardening and dirt, but trying to find out what my hands should be doing. And he said that your original medicine has to tie back to your ancestors and what they were doing long before technology, long before self care, temporary fixes like pedicures and massages. And I tied into my maternal grandmother because that's who taught me to read and write. She didn't know she taught me to read, but she did.
Mm-hmm.
That's who I dedicated my doctorate degree to, and she was my first teacher. Like if I really think about who my very first teacher was, it was my grandma. She was also my childcare when my mom was at work trips. My grandma made the trip to come watch all the kids. She also wrote for the newspaper. She had a column in the newspaper. So, but she also was a baker and a gardener. She baked. Everyone loved her baking. So for me, getting back to my hands, like my original medicine, it had to involve my hands. So I started doing writing again. So even my doctorate degree, I had to transform that to be my medicine to write my capstone. Like that became the
Yeah.
way to self preserve. And even though it didn't feel like a break, my courses, my black peers in my doc program, all of that was part of like the sustainability of me surviving that final year without feeling like I was going to be taken out or I was just gonna like end up in a jail cell because the amount of rage I had to withhold, it had to come out somehow. So it came out through writing.
Yeah.
And writing was my that like the capstone, what I wanted to investigate, interrogate, like being able to write and process that. I really got to take that last year to think about my topic. My topic for my capstone was I wanted to analyze and assess the quote unquote training or development of school leaders when they join districts that have a racial equity initiative or some kind of platform, and what their teachings and learnings were to even shape them to lead that kind of work. So I wanted
Mm-hmm.
to really interrogate school principals and what that looked like. So I was studying like what's the principal degree look like at this college, or if they're from a grow your own within the district, I was looking at those curriculums that districts self-write and assessing those and like finding all the things of like this is why the school principals I work with are struggling, or this is why the ones that are solid are solid. So yeah, I tried to make that my medicine of like I was finding a cure for something, and that kept me invested in that work and going to work every day. It gave me some way to like But then I also learned like I just didn't want to be in that district building anymore. I did everything I could to be out in the buildings, out in the buildings, even when they banned me from co-teaching with teachers. Like I got banned from co-teaching with teachers. Um, I still found ways to sneak into schools. Like I had
Yeah.
teachers let me in the back door of high school. Like yeah, I was told I couldn't even co-teach with teachers anymore. Like, and I always said when I left classrooms, teaching and being as close as I could to children, it's kind of like when these electric cars they have to get fueled back up. For me, fueling back up meant to be around children and get out of this adult space that was always so toxic sometimes.
Yeah.
Um, and so yeah, if I could get into a classroom and just sit around with a bunch of kindergartners or be in a fourth, like wherever I was at, that was how I made it from 8 to 4 every single day was if I get to a school. So when they took that from me, that was when I was going to fall apart. So then that's where I had to rely on just the joy of my nephew. Like when I get home, if I can call my nephew, I can go pick him up from school. Like what can I do? Like we
Mm.
had a trail we'd walk every day. We counted turtles on the pond, sunbathing on logs. Like my nephew became the most therapeutic space for me, just like the joy and innocence of a child. But at the same time, every time I was with me, he refueled me for the fight because I knew I was fighting with and for him and so many more kids. It was always about the children. It still is to this day.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm going to um this has been a fantastic interview and we are 2 hours in. And I have so many questions that we'll have to chat some other time about. So I'm gonna ask this last question. I'm gonna
Hmm.
ask two questions. The first is I have to ask you, is there a black educator that you would like to shout out? So we'll
Oh
start
man.
with that.
Dr. Susan King for sure,
Mm-hmm.
um, without a doubt. And then I would shout out my affiliate cohorts members, Dr. Shakia Bland and Dr. and Annette Canoli. Like those three Black women changed everything for me as a Black educator.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And then when you were working at the district, you talked about having the affinity groups, right? The care
Hmm.
teams, but they're not. You don't have them anymore. So
No.
tell us, for you now, on the back end of all these things and all these realizations, and talking to Tanisha and in your 30s and all this, for you now, what does it mean to be well?
For me, wellness, I use this phrase. You know how people will use the term resilient all the time, and it's like for some people, it's just like don't use that word around me. So I decided the term to like fit the model of what everyone says is radical resilience. Because if you look up the definition of resilience, you'll notice that it says like that something is stretched and snaps back to its original form is what it means
Mm-hmm.
to be resilient, and that's for resilience is meant for objects, not people. So if I'm going to be quote unquote resilient, I have to be radically resilient, which means that one, recognizing you don't snap back to your original form, you use the new shaping and the new stretching of you to figure out what's going to work best for you and move forward.
Yeah.
And to do that, I have to recognize and work in a way that benefits me and helps me. So even small things like bereavement leave, 3 days per death. Who said that? Who said 3 days of grief, right? And so I had to find ways, and I still do, finding ways to take this time and space of having time to grieve for myself and not even just physical death, just whatever's happening in life. Like this term bereavement gets used really tight, but it's really broad. So to be well for me means to have full control and autonomy of my time and how it's used, and also recognizing what it actually means to rest and being okay with when that rest means sometimes just doing nothing. Someone asked me today, what was my form of care for myself last night? I told two people this in the less than 12 hours today. I sit in the staircase of my house on the second step from the bottom. I stretch my legs across the first step and I lean across the third step, and my dog sits on top of the fourth step. And sometimes we just sit in darkness and
Yeah.
breathe. Sometimes there's music playing. Sometimes I'm singing to myself. And to me, that's my preservation. And it clears the mental space. And I had to be okay with being a person who what looks like I'm doing nothing is really doing the most amazing thing for me. And that is my definition of being well, is when the thing that feels like you're doing absolutely nothing is actually doing something. When
Yeah.
you are able to accept that, because we are conditioned to feel like healing and all these things is like movement and action. Sometimes, and more often than not, it's stillness. But the question how we define the term rest, it wasn't until last year someone asked me, how do you actually know? No, he said, do you actually know what it means for your body to rest? And I never been asked that question before. And I realized, no, I knew sleep. I didn't know rest. So I spent all last year tapping into what does my rest look like? How do I know when I'm actually rested? And when I'm well rested, I'm well, but it's not just sleep. And in my mind, that's all I need to do was like things are going bad, get more sleep. If it wasn't get more sleep, it was get some water. So yeah, so that's my form of wellness. And
Mm.
it comes in so many forms. It can be staring out a window, but I found my rest in stillness because there's a lot of reflection there.
Dr. Danica, thank you so much for coming on the podcast, for sharing your story, for staying in the gap for not just your nephew, for so many Black educators and students, folks of color, that community who people have never met you, but you've impacted. Um, and I'm glad that you're finding, you're coming back to this new shaped self of you and loving that about yourself. Um, and I appreciate you. And folks, make sure that you all take care of yourselves, take care of your communities, uh, be still, be radically resilient, and we'll see you on the next episode. All right, peace.